saved from God, by God, through God. But in salvation, there is perfect love. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. Romans 1:18. As this is the judgment, the light has come into the world, and people love the darkness rather than the light because their works were evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his work should be exposed. John 3:19, verse 20. One day I was working. I was burning a brush pile accumulated at work. It was a big fire, and I was just waiting for it all to burn out. However, it was almost quitting time. So I was trying to figure out what to do next to put out this huge fire. I got some dirt in my tractor and began to smother it, began to suffocate the fire. So my duty became to suppress the fire, to put the fire out, to make it void, to disallow it from burning. The last thing I wanted was for a spark to reignite. It being the weekend, a fire at night would be so easy to spot, especially in the darkness. This whole idea of suppression, what does it mean to suppress? To suppress means to suffocate, means to smother, means to choke, means to put away. We are naturally capable of suppressing the truth of God. We do not want that fire to light the night, but rather we, in our sinfulness, in our fallen condition, we love the darkness rather than the light. So, being saved from God, suppressing the truth, and loving darkness, hating the light. When we suppress the truth, we hate the light. Suppressing the truth and hating the light means this. First and foremost, it's hating or not appreciating God's provision. Secondly, it's hating God's decrees, or it's hating His commands. Lastly, we twist God's decrees and commands, and we would rather trust in our own ideas. We would rather trust in our own persuasions. We would rather trust even in our own understanding, applying our own truths, which are really lies, or falsified truths that center around my own foolishness, that center around our own pride and selfishness. Therefore, we break the commandments of God willingly. The commandments of God are this: you shall have no other gods before me. The second commandment: you shall not make idols or graven images, even in your own imagination. John Calvin said it best. John Calvin said the human heart is an idol factory. The fact of the matter is that we were created to worship. We are worshipers. However, the problem is that we start to worship other entities other than God Himself. Our hearts are not primarily bent toward idol worship. They are bent on obeying God. However, who is your God? Who are these gods of your heart? That is the question. The third commandment: you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. His name is holy. His name is nothing to take lightly. In His names, we find all the attributes. We find all His characteristics in His name. In fact, all His attributes and all His characteristics, they actually point to Christ. I like what Shai Linne says. Shai Linne says this in one of his songs. He says, they say if God is love, what's eternal torment for? That's the question of this nation. If God is love, then why does He send people to hell? If God is love, what's eternal torment for? Well, Shylin says this. He says, well, he loves the world for sure, but he loves his glory more. He loves his name. The fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. You know, the Sabbath was a day of rest, even for Yahweh. When he created the universe, when he created the world, when he created everything, all the inhabitants of the earth. The day of rest, the Sabbath, was a day of appreciation of God's creativity being showcased like an art exhibit, in which God had six masterpieces that he created all 6 days in creation. However, the last masterpiece would be his prized possession. This is the day that the Lord hath made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. That every day that God creates a new day, do we rejoice? Do we remember that Sabbath? Do we appreciate what he has done, what he has created, what he has purposed in our lives? So the Sabbath is to be a day where we rest in God's perfect plan and his perfect love, where we rest even in the purpose of his will as his dear children. You know, the Sabbath is a day to appreciate God's order of design, but also to rest in that. Now we get to the other commandments, right? We get to the commandments that deals with our relationships with other people, with one another. The fifth commandment, honor your father, honor your mother, is the only commandment that has a promise. That if you honor your mother, that you honor your father, that you will have a long life. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1 says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. This is the only commandment with the promise. Which brings me to say, you know, this is really the foundation for each and every one of our existence. That we obey our parents, that we honor our father, that we honor our mother. And God created this to be the hierarchy. Honor your father, honor your mother. The sixth commandment, you shall not murder. Of course, Jesus made it a little more plain and simple, a little more in depth. He said that if you even hate your brother, or if you even hate anybody, that you have committed murder in your heart. The seventh commandment, you shall not commit adultery. Again, Jesus put this more in depth, that even if you lust after another woman, that you lust after another man, you have committed adultery in your heart. Number 8, the eighth commandment, you shall not steal. The ninth commandment, you shall not bear false witness. You shall not lie against your neighbor. The 10th commandment, you shall not covet your neighbor's goods. Because we break the commandments of God, we are then broken. We're not just broken, but we're ruined. We're worthless. It's in our nature to sin because of Adam, but it is also in our nature to die because of Adam. In Adam, all die. For as by a man came death, by a man has come also the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, so also in Christ shall all be made alive. 1 Corinthians 15, 21 through 22. Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men, because all sin. Talk about a pandemic. Spread to all men because all sin. Romans 5:12. You know, like a wine glass that drops to the floor. It breaks into all these tiny pieces. You know, this glass is done for. It's dead. It's worthless. We might as well just get the broom and sweep it up and throw it away, right? However, for us who are broken, who are ruined, we try to do all these other things to restore ourselves. We try to find a relationship. We try to find a wife, a husband, We try to find a better job. We try to make it rich. We buy that new truck. We buy that new car. We do all these works. We become good people. But you know what? We are still ruined. It's like we try to take every piece of that wine glass and glue it back together, only to pour wine into it again to where it leaks. You know, this is us. We need to be made new. We need redemption. We need salvation. You know, we'll be analyzing John 3:16 and 17 as we continue on in our studies, as we continue in understanding the significance of John 3:16 and more in depth. Let's look to the gospel.